Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And if you're preparing for front-end interviews at Microsoft, so this video is going to really help you. So over the past few months, I have interviewed with multiple product companies, and today I'll be sharing my complete Microsoft interview experience as a front-end engineer too. So we'll be going through online assessments, every interview round, and what all actual questions were asked, and what the interviewer was looking for. Also, I'll be touching upon how I received the offer, and I'll also share some of the strategies that helped me and some of the tips that I wish I should have known earlier before the interview. So, without wasting any more time, let's get started. Okay, so we'll start how I got the interview call. So I applied on the Microsoft careers page. The role was software engineer 2 front end, and I took the referral from one of my friends. Though referral doesn't guarantee you interviews, but it does improve the chances of your profile getting shortlisted. So always apply with an referral. Then I got an like online assessment. I cleared that online assessment. Then my three rounds of virtual interviews were scheduled. And trust me, none of these interviews round was what I expected. So let's first talk about the online assessment. Microsoft used HackerRank for this round. The assessment was 70 minutes long and it had two coding questions. The questions were like LeetCode medium difficulty, and my advice here is simple. So do not focus only on solving question. Focus on passing every single test case, including the hidden test case, which are extremely important. And also manage your time well. So don't spend like 30 minutes trying to optimize your first solution. Get to a solution first, then optimize it only if time permits. Okay. So once I cleared the online assessment, I moved to the interview round. Okay. And so Microsoft scheduled three virtual interview rounds. And honestly, this is where the interview process become very interesting, right? So one thing I really noticed was that each round has a different objective. So they weren't like asking the same kind of questions repeatedly. The first round was customer focus and coding, but surprisingly, they didn't ask any DSA in that. Instead, like I was asked to design a front end application from a system design perspective. The second round was like the focus was on drive for result and coding, where I had to build a functional React application from scratch. So this was much more of like a LLD or an implementation round than a coding interview. Then finally, the third round was with the hiring manager. So it wasn't about writing code at all. It was an interactive discussion and to understand how I think, how I communicate, and how I take the ownership. So he was actually checking if I would be a good fit for the team or not. So one thing I would recommend is not to prepare these round in isolations. Each round evaluate a different skill, like be it system design, front-end implementation, or behavioral or your leadership skills. So if you prepare for all these three areas, you will be in much stronger position. So let's start with the first round because it was surprisingly the interesting round. Okay. Um, this round was completely different from what I expected. The round was called like customer focus and coding round. So naturally, I thought like it would be a DSA. Like I'll be solving a DSA problem in it. But as soon as the interview started, the interviewer told me that today we are not evaluating your DSA skills, and this is going to be a front-end system design discussion. And so that thing completely changed my approach. The interviewer asked me to design a chat GPT from a front-end perspective. And the important part is the front-end perspective. They weren't interested in like distributed system or backend architecture. They wanted to understand how I would build the user experience. Okay. So I started by breaking the application into different sections, and first the chat, like chat history on the left, where user can switch between conversations, then the main chat like window where messages were displayed and where users type prompt and receive responses. Okay, so we then discussed like how these responses should be displayed, and so instead of waiting for the complete responses, I suggested streaming the message token by token, just like ChatGPT does today. This provide a much better user experience because users start seeing the response immediately, and the interviewer then asks like follow-up questions, like multiple follow-up options. Then we discuss authentication, like what all information should be shared in the browser and what should always come from the server. Okay. Then I explain scenarios where local storage or session storage could be useful for things like user preferences or maybe theme related things. And also while keeping sensitive information secure on the back end. Okay. Then we also talk about the performance. And one interesting discussion was around virtual scrolling. Okay, since the conversation was very long and like rendering thousands of messages at at once would impact performance, right? So using virtual scrolling ensures that the only visible messages are rendered. So it makes the application more efficient. So another topic that came up was the API design, and the interviewer asked me to define what all APIs this application would require, and I discussed endpoints for creating chats, fetching the conversation history, sending messages, and streaming responses. Since I had already prepared system design from a full stack perspective, I naturally started explaining the backend, how backend could handle these requests. And the interviewers smiled and said like that's a good discussion, but like they let's keep the focus on the front end. So that was actually a valuable lesson. They weren't trying to evaluate the backend architecture. They wanted to see how a front-end engineer thinks um, about designing a scalable, user-friendly application. Okay. So my biggest takeaway from this round is that Microsoft wasn't testing whether I could memorize system design concept. They wanted to understand how I approach building real product. And one tip I strongly recommend is to research the team before your interview, because my team were for the co-pilot user experience team. So asking me to design ChatGPT was very relevant, and which I realized later. So if you know like what the team builds, you can prepare a similar system design questions in advance, and that can give you a huge advantage. So I cleared this round with a positive feedback. And but the next round was even more challenging because I had to build a React application from scratch, and that too also under the time pressure. After clearing the first round, I moved to the second interview, and it was called Drive for Results plus Coding. So this round was completely hands-on React development interview. So unlike the previous interview that was discussion-based round, here I actually had to build a working application from scratch. The interviewer gave me a problem statement to build a PC configuration website. The application had different components like RAM, motherboard, and the GPU, and I was provided with the compatibility dataset. So the objective was simple. Whenever a user select different component, the application should determine like whether the combination is compatible or not. Okay. Since we had the time limit, I clarified the scope with the interviewer. And instead of trying to build the entire e-commerce website, I proposed keeping the UI simple by using the drop downs for selecting the components. The interviewer agreed, and which allowed me to focus on solving the actual problem instead of spending time on unnecessary UI. And then I started by building the drop downs. Um, then manage the selected values using the React state. Based on the selection, I created utility functions that checked the compatibility data and updated the UI in the real time. Okay, so whenever a user changed a component, the compatibility status was recalculated and so one thing I consciously focused was to write clean and the modular code. Instead of putting all the logic inside one file or one component, I separated the compatibility logic into a reusable utility functions. So this made solution easier to understand, and it also made it easier for interviewer to ask follow-up questions. Okay. Then comes the most interesting part of the interview. And the interviewer intentionally tested my application using an input combination like that looked valid at first, but it was actually incompatible according to the provided dataset. So that was a hidden edge case, and the goal wasn't just to see whether the UI worked, it was to check like whether my implementation actually respected the compatibility rules or not. And fortunately, because my logic was entirely through data and without any hard-coded assumptions, the application correctly displayed that the configuration was compatible. And so this was a good reminder that interviewers often test edge cases to understand like how robust your implementation really is. And the biggest lesson from this round is to prioritize functionality over appearance. So in front-end interviews, it is very tempting to spend time making the UI look beautiful. Okay, but the interviewer care much more about whether your application works correctly. Okay, so my advice would be first complete all the functional requirement, and then if you have time, improve the styling. Also write clean code with reusable functions because interviewer frequently ask follow-up questions and based on your implementation. So yeah, so after clearing both these technical rounds, I had a final interview with the hiring manager, and surprisingly, there wasn't a single question in like single question coding question in that round because but I think it was the most important interview of the entire process, the hiring manager round. Okay, so after clearing two technical rounds, I moved to the final interview with the hiring manager. And to be honest, this was the most important round of the entire process. And what surprised me was that the hiring manager started himself by saying that I am not going to ask you technical question today, and I want this discussion to be an interactive discussion. So that actually completely changed the atmosphere. So instead of feeling like an interview, it felt more like a conversation with someone I would potentially be working with. Okay. So the hiring manager first introduced the team and explained that they were working on Copilot user experience. He spoke about the kind of problems the team was solving and what their day-to-day work looked like. Then after that, he opened the floor for the questions. And I think this is where many candidates miss an opportunity. So instead of asking generic questions like what's the work-life balance and maybe how big is the team, I I actually try to ask questions that shows genuine curiosity about the product. Okay. So for example, I asked how they handle synchronization across multiple devices. I touch upon the protocols. Like I asked them, do they use WebSockets or any hybrid communication approach? And I also asked them like, what's the biggest technical challenges they're facing currently while building Copilot. So we ended up having a really engaging discussion around the product rather than simply following a question and answer format. Of course, there was behavioral questions as well. Like I was asked about my previous experiences, situation where I took the ownership, like some of the mm, well-known questions about resolving conflict within the team and explaining a scenario where a feature I was working on and it was deprioritized by the product team. So for questions like these, I highly recommend that you use the STAR tech method. Like you explain the situation and then the task and then the what actions you took and then finally the result. So it helps you structure your thoughts clearly and makes the answer more easy to follow. And my biggest advice for this round is to research the team before the interview, understand what product they are building, think about the challenges they might face, or prepare like for those kind of questions. And if you can demonstrate that you are already thinking like someone on the team rather than just trying to get the job, like you will leave a much better, stronger impression. Okay. So fortunately, after this round, I received positive feedback. After a few days, from the hiring manager round, I received an email from Microsoft with the subject line saying, "Congratulations on your offer." And as you can see, I've attached the screenshot here. Honestly, that opening that email was one of the most satisfying moment of my interview journey. And it wasn't just about getting an offer from Microsoft, it was the validation that all the lead code session, the late night, like the front end design practices, and all the React projects, mock interviews has really paid off. So, yeah, the role was for software engineer too, and I was given L61. The overall package was around like 65 lakhs per year. And but if there's one thing which I want you to take away from this video, it's that the offer wasn't one in single interview round. Okay. Every round evaluated a different skill. The online assessment tested problem solving. The first round tested the front end design and the product thinking. The second interview tested my ability to build a functional React application under time pressure. And finally, the hiring manager round evaluated the ownership, the communication, the culture fit, and whether I'll be a good fit for the team or not. Um, so looking back, I think what helped me the most wasn't just practicing DSA. It was having strong fundamental of front end and understanding how real products are built, communicating my thoughts, process clearly, and always trying to think from the user's perspective. So if you're preparing for Microsoft front end interviews, my advice is simple. Don't prepare only to clear interview. Okay. So prepare to become the kind of engineer these companies actually want to hire. So that mindset that made the difference for me. And I hope this video gives you a realistic picture of Microsoft front-end interview process. And if you are preparing for similar roles and have any questions, drop down in the comments. I'll try to reply to them. And if you would like me to share my interview experience with other companies, do let me know. Until then, I'll see you next. So if you found this helpful, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.